What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars sits down for what should be a light-hearted chat, and it turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? The Kelly Clarkson Show has built its reputation on warmth, laughter, and genuine conversation. But what unfolded during Channing Tatum's appearance shattered that image in spectacular fashion. Before we get into the jaw-dropping details of how this interview went completely off the rails, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened here. Because trust me, you're going to have opinions about this one. The interview started like any other. Kelly welcomed Channing to the stage with her signature enthusiasm, that bright smile lighting up the studio as the audience erupted in applause. Channing walked out, waving to the crowd, and settled into the guest chair across from Kelly. The energy seemed positive, normal even. Kelly dove right in with what seemed like an innocent question about his latest project, a film that had been generating buzz for months. Channing started talking about the creative process, the challenges of the role, all the standard promotional talking points you'd expect from a seasoned actor making the rounds. But then Kelly shifted gears. She leaned forward slightly, her expression changing from casual interest to something more pointed, more deliberate. She brought up something that caught Channing completely off guard. She mentioned an interview he had done years ago, one where he made some comments about the industry, about fame, about the toll it takes on personal relationships. Now, most hosts would tread lightly here, maybe use it as a springboard for a deeper conversation about growth and change. But Kelly didn't do that. She pressed in harder. Kelly asked him directly if he stood by those comments, if he thought his perspective had changed, or if he was just saying what he needed to say back then to maintain his image. The way she phrased it, there was an edge to it, a challenge hanging in the air. You could see Channing's expression shift. The easygoing movie star persona flickered for just a moment. He paused, longer than you'd expect, and when he responded, his tone had changed too. Channing said he thought it was interesting that she would bring that up, that of all the things they could discuss about his current work, about the projects he was passionate about now. She wanted to rehash something from years ago. He wasn't aggressive, not yet, but there was definitely a defensive wall going up. Kelly didn't back down. She clarified that she brought it up because she thought it was relevant, that audiences deserve to know if public figures actually believe what they say, or if it's all just part of the performance. That word, performance, seemed to land differently than Kelly might have intended. Channing sat back in his chair, and you could see him processing, deciding how to respond. He pointed out that everyone in this business, including talk show hosts, are performing to some degree. He said that's not dishonesty, that's just understanding the medium you're working in. The comment hung there between them, and the audience, which had been comfortably laughing and clapping moments before, went quiet. You could feel the shift in the room. Kelly's smile tightened. She acknowledged his point but then pivoted to another angle. She brought up how he had spoken about authenticity in that same old interview, about how important it was to him to be genuine with his fans. Then she asked, point blank, if he felt he was being genuine right now, or if this was just another performance. The question was sharp, cutting in a way that went beyond normal interview banter. This wasn't playful challenging. This was something else entirely. Channing's jaw tensed. He asked Kelly what exactly she was trying to get at, what the real agenda was here. He said he came on the show to talk about his film, to connect with her audience, not to be interrogated about his character. Kelly responded quickly, saying she wasn't questioning his character. She was simply asking questions that her viewers would want answered. She said that's her job, to dig deeper, to get past the surface-level promotion and find something real. But Channing wasn't buying it. He said there's a difference between asking tough questions and setting someone up to look bad. He said he could feel the framing of every question, the way she was steering the conversation into territory that had nothing to do with why he agreed to be there. Kelly's expression hardened. She told him that if he couldn't handle basic questions about his own public statements, maybe he needed to reconsider doing interviews at all. The tension was now impossible to ignore. The audience was dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to be holding their breath. Channing leaned forward, and when he spoke, his voice was low but clear. He said he could handle any question thrown at him, but he wasn't going to sit there and be disrespected in front of millions of people. He said Kelly was twisting his words, taking things out of context, and doing it deliberately. Kelly shot back that she hadn't twisted anything, that she had simply asked him to reflect on his own statements. She said if he felt uncomfortable, maybe that was something he needed to examine within himself, rather than blaming her for doing her job. The exchange was escalating rapidly now, both of them holding their ground, neither willing to de-escalate or find common ground. Channing took a breath, visibly trying to compose himself, but you could see the frustration simmering just beneath the surface. He told Kelly that he had done hundreds of interviews over his career, sat across from countless hosts, and never once felt like he was being ambushed the way he did right now. He said there was a way to ask challenging questions that still respected the guest, and this wasn't it. Kelly's eyes flashed. She said she found it fascinating that a man who had built his career on playing tough guys and action heroes was suddenly playing the victim card because she asked him to defend his own words. That comment landed like a bomb. Channing's expression shifted from frustrated to genuinely angry. He told her that was a cheap shot, reducing his entire body of work to some superficial stereotype. He said he had never claimed to be a tough guy in real life, that those were roles, characters, fiction. He said the fact that she couldn't separate the person from the performance said more about her approach to this conversation than it did about him. The audience was completely frozen now, unsure whether to react, unsure if this was somehow part of a planned bit, though the genuine tension made it clear this was anything but scripted. Kelly leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, and asked Channing if he was always this defensive when someone pushed back on him. She said she had interviewed plenty of celebrities who could handle direct questions without falling apart. Channing laughed, but it was a harsh, humorless sound. He said he wasn't falling apart. He was calling out what was happening in real time. He said Kelly was trying to create a moment, trying to manufacture drama for ratings, and he wasn't going to play along. Kelly's voice went up slightly, that measured talk show host composure starting to crack. She said if anyone was creating drama, it was him, that he was the one who escalated a simple conversation into a confrontation. She said all she had done was ask legitimate questions, and he had turned it into this. Channing shook his head, saying that was revisionist history happening in real time. He said from the moment he sat down, Kelly had been steering the conversation toward conflict, and now she was trying to make him the bad guy for recognizing it. The back and forth was rapid fire now, overlapping at points. Kelly insisted she was doing exactly what her audience expected from her. Being real, being authentic, not just lobbing softball questions. Channing countered that there was nothing authentic about this, that it felt calculated, pre-planned even. He asked if she had come into this interview already deciding she was going to make him uncomfortable. Kelly denied it emphatically, saying she never goes into an interview with an agenda beyond having a genuine conversation. Channing pressed her on that. He asked her to explain how bringing up a random interview from years ago, something that had nothing to do with his current project, qualified as genuine conversation. Kelly said it provided context, it showed growth or lack thereof. It gave the audience a fuller picture of who he was. Channing said it was a gotcha tactic, plain and simple, and they both knew it. He said if she wanted to give the audience a fuller picture, she could have asked him about his charitable work, about his growth as a father, about the artistic risks he had taken recently. But instead she went straight for something she knew would put him on the defensive. Kelly's tone shifted again, becoming colder, more clipped. She said she wasn't going to apologize for asking hard questions, that if he couldn't handle the heat, maybe he should stick to puff piece interviews on morning shows. Channing stood up from his chair. Not quickly, not dramatically, but deliberately. He said he was done, that this had stopped being an interview and had become something else entirely, something he didn't sign up for and wasn't going to participate in. Kelly looked genuinely surprised for the first time. She told him to sit back down, that they still had more to discuss. Channing said there was nothing left to discuss, that it was clear this conversation was never going to be productive. Kelly's voice took on an almost pleading quality, though whether it was genuine or performative was impossible to tell. She said he was overreacting, that they could move on to other topics, that they didn't have to stay stuck on this one point. But Channing wasn't having it. He said the problem wasn't just one question or one topic, it was the entire approach, the entire tone Kelly had set from the beginning. He said he had tried to be gracious, tried to answer her questions honestly, and it didn't matter because she had already decided what narrative she wanted. Kelly stood up too now, saying that was completely unfair, that she had given him every opportunity to explain himself, and he had chosen to be combative instead. Channing turned to face her more directly. He said he had been nothing but professional until she started taking shots at him, questioning his integrity, suggesting he was fake. He said if she wanted to see combative, this still wasn't it. But he was absolutely not going to sit there and smile while she tried to tear him down. Kelly said she had never tried to tear him down, that he was projecting his own insecurities onto a normal interview situation. That word, insecurities, seemed to be another breaking point. Channing told her she didn't know anything about his insecurities, that she was making assumptions based on a 20-minute conversation. He said the arrogance it took to think she could psychoanalyze someone she just met was astounding. Kelly fired back that she wasn't psychoanalyzing anyone. She was responding to what he was showing her in real time, and what he was showing her was someone who couldn't handle being questioned. The studio audience was completely silent, some people looking at each other in confusion, others staring straight ahead like they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Channing told Kelly that her entire premise was flawed, that being questioned wasn't the issue, it was the hostility behind the questions. He said there was a difference between journalism and antagonism, and she had crossed that line multiple times. Kelly said she resented the implication that she was being hostile, that she had maintained professionalism throughout while he had become increasingly aggressive. Channing laughed again, that same bitter sound. He said if she thought she had been professional, then their definitions of professionalism were worlds apart. He said a professional interviewer tries to make their guest comfortable enough to open up, not cornered enough to shut down. Kelly responded that maybe some guests needed to be cornered, that sometimes discomfort led to truth. Channing asked her what truth she thought she was uncovering, what grand revelation she expected to get by making him feel attacked. Kelly said she wasn't trying to make him feel attacked. She was trying to get past the rehearsed answers and the carefully managed public image. Channing said his public image wasn't carefully managed. It was just who he was. And the fact that she couldn't accept that said more about her cynicism than his authenticity. He said not everyone in Hollywood was fake. Not everyone was hiding something. And her assumption that they were was exactly what was wrong with this kind of interview style. Kelly told him he was being incredibly defensive for someone who claimed to have nothing to hide. Channing said he was being defensive because he was being attacked, that it was a completely natural human response. He said if she came at anyone the way she had come at him, they would respond the same way. Kelly disagreed, saying she had asked tough questions to plenty of guests, and none of them had reacted like this. Channing said maybe those guests were better at hiding their discomfort, or maybe Kelly hadn't pushed them as hard as she was pushing him. The conversation was going in circles now, both of them entrenched in their positions. Kelly said she stood by every question she had asked, that they were fair and relevant. Channing said they might have been fair in a different context, with a different tone, but the way she had delivered them made them feel like attacks. Kelly asked him why he was so focused on how she made him feel, instead of the substance of what she was asking. Channing said because the how matters, that communication isn't just about words, it's about intent and tone and respect. Kelly said she had shown him respect by taking him seriously enough to ask substantive questions. Channing said there was nothing respectful about the way she had conducted this interview. He said respect would have been listening to his answers, instead of just waiting for her next opportunity to challenge him. Kelly said she had listened to every word, and what she heard was evasion and deflection. Channing said what she heard was her own preconceived narrative being confirmed because that's what she wanted to hear. At this point, you could see producers in the wings, crew members exchanging worried glances, everyone trying to figure out how to handle what was unfolding. Kelly noticed the activity and seemed to remember suddenly that they were on camera, that this was being broadcast, that there would be consequences. She tried to change her approach, her voice softening slightly. She told Channing that maybe they had gotten off track, that perhaps they could reset and try again. But Channing shook his head. He said you couldn't reset something like this, that the damage was done. He said the audience had watched the whole thing unfold. They had seen exactly how Kelly approached the conversation, and no amount of backtracking would change that. Kelly said she wasn't backtracking. She was trying to salvage what was left of the interview. Channing said there was nothing left to salvage, that this interview was over the moment she decided to make it adversarial instead of conversational. Kelly's frustration was fully visible now. She said she had given him every chance to have a good interview, and he had sabotaged it with his attitude. Channing said she was rewriting history again, that she was the one who had set the tone from the start. He said he came in ready to have a fun, engaging conversation, and she turned it into an interrogation. Kelly said if he experienced normal questions as an interrogation, that was his problem, not hers. Channing took a step toward the edge of the stage. He told Kelly that he genuinely felt sorry for her if this was what she thought good interviewing looked like. He said she had a platform, a voice, an opportunity to connect with people, and instead she used it to create conflict. Kelly said she used her platform to hold people accountable, to not let celebrities just coast through on charm and talking points. Channing said there was a difference between accountability and antagonism, and she seemed incapable of seeing it. Kelly asked him what he wanted from her, an apology for doing her job. Channing said he didn't want anything from her at this point, he just wanted to leave. He said this had been one of the most unpleasant professional experiences he had had in years, and he included some genuinely difficult film shoots in that calculation. Kelly said she found it hard to believe that being asked a few challenging questions ranked among his worst professional experiences. Channing said it wasn't the questions. It was everything around them, the setup, the tone, the refusal to engage in good faith. Kelly said she had engaged in complete good faith, and he had met that with hostility. Channing said she was gaslighting him now, trying to make him question his own perception of what had happened. He said everyone watching could see what had transpired. They didn't need Kelly to reframe it for them. Kelly said the audience was smart enough to make up their own minds about who was being reasonable and who was overreacting. Channing agreed, saying he was confident in what conclusion they would reach. Kelly crossed her arms and told Channing that if he was so confident the audience would side with him, maybe he should sit back down and finish the interview properly, show everyone he could handle a real conversation. Channing said he had nothing left to prove to her or anyone watching that his work spoke for itself, and this circus didn't change that. Kelly said walking away would only make him look worse, that it would confirm everything she had been suggesting about him not being able to handle pressure. Channing stopped moving toward the exit and turned back to face her. He said he found it fascinating that she was now trying to manipulate him into staying by threatening his reputation. He said that was exactly the kind of tactic he would expect from someone who had been operating in bad faith this entire time. Kelly said she wasn't manipulating anyone. She was simply pointing out the reality of the situation, that leaving in the middle of an interview would be seen as running away. Channing said he wasn't running away. He was making a conscious choice not to participate in something toxic. He said there was strength in knowing when to walk away from a situation that wasn't serving anyone. Kelly said it was serving her audience, who deserved to see how he handled himself under pressure. Channing said her audience deserved better than watching a host berate a guest for entertainment value. Kelly's face flushed. She said she had never berated him, that she had asked questions, and he had fallen apart. Channing told her to stop lying, to stop trying to rewrite what had happened right in front of everyone. He said the cameras caught everything. The footage would speak for itself. Kelly said she welcomed people watching the footage because it would vindicate her completely. Channing said if she truly believed that, she was more delusional than he thought. The insult hung in the air, and Kelly's expression hardened into something cold and final. Kelly turned slightly toward the wings and made a gesture. She told Channing that if he wasn't going to participate respectfully, if he was going to resort to personal insults, then maybe it was time for him to leave. Channing said he had been trying to leave, that she was the one who kept engaging. Kelly said she meant leave the studio entirely, that this appearance was over. Channing said that was fine by him, that he couldn't get out of there fast enough. But Kelly wasn't done. She told him that she had tried to give him a fair platform, tried to have a meaningful conversation, and he had made it impossible. Channing said the only thing she had tried to do was make him look bad to boost her own ratings. Kelly said that was a paranoid fantasy, that not everything was about him. Channing said this interview certainly was, considering he was the guest, and she had spent the entire time attacking him instead of actually interviewing him. Kelly called over one of the producers who had been hovering nearby, clearly unsure how to intervene. She told the producer that Channing needed to be escorted out, that the interview was terminated. The producer looked uncomfortable, glancing between Kelly and Channing, clearly not wanting to be in the middle of this situation. Channing told the producer not to worry, that he was leaving voluntarily, no escort necessary. Kelly said she wanted to make sure he left without causing any more disruption. Channing asked what disruption he had caused beyond defending himself from her attacks. Kelly said his entire demeanor had been disruptive, that he had turned what should have been a pleasant interview into a disaster. Channing said she had turned it into a disaster, that he had simply responded to what she created. Kelly said he needed to take responsibility for his own behavior instead of blaming everyone else. Channing said the same thing right back to her, that she needed to take responsibility for how she had conducted herself. He said this would follow her, that people would see this and question whether they wanted to subject themselves to the same treatment. Kelly said she wasn't worried about that at all, that her show had a strong reputation, and one difficult guest wouldn't change that. Channing said he wasn't the difficult one, and time would tell who the audience believed. The producer finally spoke up, quietly suggesting they cut to commercial. Kelly ignored the suggestion and kept her focus on Channing. She told him that she had interviewed thousands of people over her career and managed to have productive conversations with almost all of them. She said the common denominator in this situation was him. Channing said the common denominator was her approach, her questions, her unwillingness to engage with any perspective but her own. Kelly told the producer again to have Channing removed from the studio. This time her voice was louder, more insistent. Channing held up his hands and said there was no need for dramatics, that he was already on his way out. He started walking toward the exit, but turned back one more time. He told Kelly that he hoped she would reflect on what had happened here, that she would consider whether this was really the kind of interviewer she wanted to be. Kelly said she knew exactly what kind of interviewer she was, and she was proud of it. Channing shook his head and said that was the saddest part of all of this. He said if she couldn't see the problem, couldn't recognize how she had contributed to this disaster, then nothing he said would matter anyway. Kelly said the only disaster was his inability to handle basic scrutiny. Channing said he handled scrutiny just fine. What he didn't handle well was disrespect disguised as journalism. Kelly said she was a talk show host, not a journalist, and if he had understood the difference, maybe this would have gone better. Channing said whether she called herself a journalist or a host, the principles of respect and good faith should still apply. Kelly said respect was earned, not given automatically just because someone was famous. Channing said he had never asked for special treatment, just basic human decency, and apparently that was too much to expect. Kelly said she had shown him decency, and he had thrown it back in her face. Channing said her version of decency was unrecognizable to him. Security personnel were now visible near the stage, though they seemed as reluctant as everyone else to physically intervene. Channing noticed them and laughed. He told Kelly that having security present was really cementing her narrative that he was the problem. Kelly said she was simply taking precautions, that his behavior had been unpredictable. Channing said the only unpredictable thing was how far she would go to paint herself as the victim in a situation she created. Kelly told him he needed to leave now, that his time was up. Channing said his time had been up the moment he walked onto this stage and realized what kind of interview this was going to be. He told the audience directly that he was sorry they had to witness this, that it wasn't what anyone had signed up for. Kelly said he was trying to manipulate the audience now, trying to win them over with false sympathy. Channing said there was nothing false about it, that he genuinely felt bad this was how things had turned out. Finally, Channing walked off the stage for the last time. Kelly watched him go, her expression unreadable. She turned to the camera and tried to compose herself. She told the audience they would take a commercial break and be right back. But you could hear the strain in her voice, see the tension in her shoulders. As the cameras cut away, the studio remained in shocked silence, everyone processing what had just happened. So what do you think really caused this explosion between Kelly Clarkson and Channing Tatum? Was Kelly just doing her job as a hard-hitting interviewer, or did she cross a line? Did Channing overreact, or was he justified in walking away? Make sure you subscribe to stay updated on this story and drop a comment below with your take. Who do you think was in the wrong here, and what would you have done in that situation?